legislation amendments, the three separate bills. And I'm firstly pleased to see that the pre-poll time has been reduced to 12 days, although I would personally like to see it reduced even slightly less than that. Where we have seen in recent elections many Australians voting well out of election day, a long time out before the election day, when policies of the parties are still being announced, I think is a threat to open, fair and free elections. I'm also disappointed, Deputy Speaker, that there has been no requirements for people to show ID before they vote in these amendments. I think that is an important integrity measure that has been overlooked. And I find with great surprise that those that are most vocal for people to show some type of vaccine passport or health papers to go to the pub or to cross the state border are the ones that are most vocal against simply showing a form of ID before you vote. However, Deputy Speaker, I am greatly concerned with the specific bill on the party registration integrity measure. This reduces or increases the number of party members that a party needs to have to be recognised in an election from 500 to 1,500. Deputy Speaker, now is not the time in our nation's history to try and narrow the field, to reduce the competition, to make it more difficult for independent and alternate voices to have their say. Now is not the time for a concentration of power between the minor parties that this legislation will bring about. Just have a look around our nation at the moment as what is happening to realise that this is not the time for limiting the voices of independents. Deputy Speaker, I no longer recognise the country that I was grown up in. I look out and I see endless lockdowns across the nation. I see the greatest assault on our small business community since Federation. How is a small business person meant to survive when they are ordered out of their business by government for months, but yet they are left with obligations for rent, which they may have personal guarantees signed for, underwritten by their own family home? That is the assault that we are doing on small business. We've seen the emergence of a police state, Deputy Speaker. I saw scenes last weekend that I thought I would never, ever see in my country. We saw Victorian police pointing firearms at unarmed citizens and firing projectiles at high velocity at close range. This is not Australia. This is what you would expect in some third world nation in South America where the police force was out of control. I've seen our police in Victoria arrest and handcuff pregnant mothers before their children in their own home, and their offence for posting a protest on Facebook against the government. And against this background, we want to restrict and limit and make it more difficult for individuals and alternate voices to come to this place to have their say? What about the censorship that's currently going on, Deputy Speaker? We've got APRA, our health regulator, clamping down on any doctor or nurse that has an alternate opinion. And there are many of them, Deputy Speaker, that have an alternate opinion to what our health bureaucrats are saying, but they are silenced, they are censored with the threat of losing their licence.
Order. The member for Hughes will return to the bills before the House.
Deputy Speaker, it is important to understand what is happening in our country as the reasons why these bills should be rejected. It is because of the concentration of power that is going on in our nation. We even see in this parliament, Deputy Speaker, the trashing of the principles of the Bill of Rights of 1688. For 4 centuries, this parliament has had a tradition, and all Westminster parliaments around the world, that the proceedings and debates of this parliament should not be questioned or impeached by anyone. And yet, we had last week, Deputy Speaker, the member for Dawson give a speech which he posted to his Facebook page through the official links on the Australian Parliamentary Webhouse, but he had to actually censor the words that were said on the floor of this parliament to comply with the regulations of our tech giant. When what is said on the floor of this parliament is censored, Deputy Speaker, we have a serious problem, and that is why we are so wrong to reduce and make it more difficult for independent voices to come to this country. Deputy Speaker, we also have now a debt, a net debt, Commonwealth debt, over $1 trillion. That is a million millions. That's both the Labor Party and the Liberal Party have run up a debt of $1 trillion. When I first came to this place, Deputy Speaker, we were concerned that the debt had been over $100 million. Billion dollars. $100 billion debt had been rung up. And we were concerned, and we expressed our concern that was leaving a debt for future generations of Australians. And both parties have run that up to $1 trillion while I've been in this place, and we bring a bill before Parliament to limit independent voices and to give more concentration of power to the major parties. How does this make any sense, Deputy Speaker? Deputy Speaker, I've also seen in this parliament the freedoms that were once the birthright of every single Australian, and the freedoms that was the contract that we made with those migrants that decided to become Australian citizens and took an oath of citizenship. They were freedoms that were underwritten by being Australian. But we are seeing those freedoms suspended, not by the Parliament, Deputy Speaker, but by unelected health bureaucrats, with the vague promise that those freedoms that have been stolen will only be returned to us if we sort of submit to some mandatory vaccination program, maybe sometime in the future. Deputy Speaker, this is not the time to narrow the power in this place, to concentrate the power in the major parties, and that's what this does. We need more independent voices. I strongly disagree on many things with the member for Indi. I strongly disagree with many things for the member for Warringah. But we sit here and we argue it out amongst each other, Deputy Speaker, and that, I believe, makes our democracy a stronger place. Anything that weakens the opportunity for independent and alternate voices makes our democracy weaker, and that's what the second bill in these three bills does, Deputy Speaker, and I cannot support it. I, for them, during the third reading stage, will be moving an amendment to reduce that threshold from 1,500, which is being increased from 1,000 to 1,500, to reduce it back just to 1,000. We need independent voices. We need alternate opinions. We do not need more power in the hands of both major parties, Deputy Speaker. Therefore, I oppose and I'll vote against the second bill of these three, but I'll support the other two bills. And as I said, I'll be moving an amendment in the third reading stage for that second bill. I thank the House.
The question is that